Hi, my name is Andrea, and I'm 40 years old. I stepped out of the taxi with a duffel on my shoulder and a weight on my chest I couldn't name. Years in the CIA had taught me how to move through hostile places without leaving ripples, but nothing in training prepares you for the battlefield of home. The September air was cool and damp, the kind that clings to your sleeves and reminds you of everything you forgot to miss. The iron gate in front of the house I grew up in used to be decorative. Tonight it looked like a verdict. A camera above the keypad tilted as if it recognized me, then settled into a blank stare. I buzzed the intercom. A sharp tone. Silence. I tried again, then said, "It's me." I didn't add more than that. I didn't say where I'd been, what I'd done, or how many times I'd imagined this moment. I just waited for a welcome that never came. The front door opened. Jessica stepped out onto the porch in a blazer that matched the steel in her eyes. Phone at her ear, chin lifted, the family's new gatekeeper. "There's someone trying to enter the property," she said, not looking at me. "Claims to be family." She paced as if she couldn't hear me say her name. She glanced my way only long enough to sweep her gaze over the duffel, and the plain clothes I wear when I need to be neither seen nor remembered. "You can't be here," she said flatly. "We moved on." "Moved on from what?" I asked. "From you." Blue lights bent around the corner and washed the street in quiet warning. The officers were polite. Calm voices, careful distance, the choreography of people who'd rather de-escalate than decide. "Do you have proof of residence?" one asked. The question lodged like a splinter. I had a passport, a stack of credentials that opened doors half a world away, and nothing that opened this one. Through a lit window, I saw David in the living room chair, motionless, a silhouette cut from stone. He didn't wave. He didn't move. He didn't even pretend not to see me. My phone buzzed. A message from Helen. "You should return to base. There's nothing here for you." No greeting. No name. Just instruction, like I'd stumbled into someone else's briefing. The officer's voice softened. "Ma'am, we're going to ask you to step off the property." I nodded before he finished. I've disengaged from worse with less dignity. I backed to the sidewalk, the iron gate drawing a neat line through whatever was left of the past. I didn't cry. I don't break where they expect me to. But something old inside me shifted, like a door sealing from the other side. By morning, a for sale sign sprouted on the lawn as if it had been growing there all night. Roots in the soil, plastic grin to the street. I stared at it and felt the first clean burn of anger cut through the fog. Houses don't betray people. People do. Paper helps them do it cleanly. At a corner cafe, I wrapped both hands around a cup I didn't drink and tried to slow my breathing. I cataloged facts the way I do on assignment. The locks are changed. The gate code rejects me. Jessica treats me like a trespasser. David refuses to acknowledge me. Helen would rather text an order than speak. The house is being moved like a chess piece I'm not allowed to touch. None of this is random. None of this is new. They're just doing it in daylight now. I pulled a notepad from my bag and wrote a single line in block letters. Find the paper. Paper is where erasures become permanent, or reversible. I don't need permission to exist in my own story. I need proof. Outside, the wind lifted the edge of the for sale flyer nailed beneath the sign. It fluttered, winked, and settled. I finished the cold coffee and stood. I've spent half my life following trails that weren't meant to be found. If my family wanted to erase me with clean signatures and quiet calls, they should have remembered who taught me to read between lines. I don't chase people when paper can tell me more. By mid-morning, I was standing at a public terminal in the county records office with a stack of quarters for the printer and a name I already hated blinking on the screen. Raven Holdings LLC. The property history loaded like a slow confession. 3 months ago, a transfer of interest. 2 months ago, a deed update. Last month, a lien cleared in record time. All of it neat, timed, frictionless, like someone practiced. I drilled into the deed image. The signature line at the bottom wore my name as if it had earned the right. The loop on the A was almost perfect. Almost. Whoever forged it didn't know that under stress my pen drags on the downstroke. This signature was rehearsed, not lived. I printed the page, circled the curve that betrayed it, and slid the copy into a thin plastic sleeve. Paper cut number 1. Proof of intent. The clerk at the counter tried to help me without helping me. "If you're contesting," she said, voice low, You'll want the notary log and the transfer affidavit. She tapped the form numbers on a sticky note and slid it across like a secret. I thanked her. She didn't ask questions. Good people in small offices learn not to. The notary record looked legitimate until it didn't. The stamp belonged to a name I recognized from internal memos I'm not supposed to have anymore. A notary flagged last year for sloppy IDs. The witness signature was a scrawl I'd seen at holiday dinners, on checks for family expenses, on 100 sticky notes that used to be left on the fridge. Jessica. She had witnessed my signature. I stepped outside and let the sun glare burn off the chill that moved through me. I called the number listed for Raven Holdings. A pleasant voicemail asked me to leave a message for the acquisitions team. I didn't. I'd already heard enough. Back at the sidewalk, I looked at the house from a distance most of the day. Delivery vans came and went. A contractor truck idled for 20 minutes, then left without anyone getting out. Through the front window, I saw David pass once, a ghost of a man in a room that used to hold more life than that. He paused, lifted his phone, and turned away. Helen never appeared. She didn't need to. Her message had done its work. I bought a burner phone at a strip mall and a legal pad with a green cover I reserve for operations that cross into personal territory. On the first page I drew 3 columns. Names, paper, money. Under names, I wrote Jessica, David, Helen, Daniel. Daniel didn't show on the deed, but logistics always needs a logistics man, and family conspiracies hire in-house. Under paper, I listed deed, notary log, transfer affidavit, lien clearances, any power of attorney attempts, will copies. Under money, I wrote escrow trail, wires to Raven, wires from shell entities, utility anomalies. Clean crimes leave clean trails. The trick is knowing where dust settles. I walked the block at dusk because neighborhoods loosen at the edges when the light goes soft. A woman out with her dog squinted at the sign and asked if I was the agent. No, I said. Just looking. She told me the house had been busy at odd hours. Cold storage noise, she added, wrinkling her nose. Hums at night. Refrigeration in a residence without a permit usually means one of 2 things, and I didn't like either. At a paper print kiosk, I pulled the MLS sheet for the listing. The seller of record wasn't a person. It was Raven Holdings, with a registered address that mapped to a mailbox rental company across town. I printed the tax parcel page, then cross-checked utilities. The usage curve spiked after midnight, dipped in the morning, rose again on weekends. A house breathes with the people who live in it. This one pulsed like a machine. I called the number I least wanted to call. The line rang twice before Jessica answered. She didn't say hello. If you keep poking at this, you'll regret it, she said, voice low, controlled. Then say it clearly, I replied. You forged my name. We followed the process, she said. Signatures were witnessed. The notary was present. She wanted me to hear the checkboxes, the compliance buzzwords, the legal scaffolding built to outlast outrage. You stood where I should have stood, I said, and signed a lie. There was a pause. Somewhere near her, a drawer slid shut. You left, she said. We're protecting what's ours. I didn't leave, I said, colder than I meant to. I served. And you sold. She hung up without another word. Night came down clean and fast. I made one last stop. The public library. In a corner where no one looks, I scanned the forged deed, the notary page, the MLS sheet, the utility curve, saved them under innocuous file names on an encrypted thumb drive that never travels with me. When people plan to erase you, you don't keep your proof where they expect to find it. On the way out, I passed a bulletin board with a flyer half torn from its thumbtack. Know your title rights. I tore it down and folded it into my pocket. Not because I needed the advice, but because it reminded me of the rule that has never failed me. When they make it about family, make it about facts. The house lights blinked once as I turned the corner. An automatic timer, or a signal to someone who wasn't me. Either way, the message landed. They were moving pieces. I was moving paper. And paper was about to move them back. I don't bring knives to paper fights. I bring lawyers. By noon I was sitting across from Julia in a quiet conference room that smelled like toner and fresh coffee. We hadn't seen each other since undergrad, but she took one look at the copies I laid out. Deed image, notary log, MLS printout, utility curve, and her posture shifted from friend to counsel. Two things jump out, she said, sliding the forged deed under a desk lamp. First, the notary. He's been flagged before. I can pull disciplinary records. Second, the timing, transfer, lien clearance, listing, too clean. That's choreography, not coincidence. I nodded. Jessica witnessed my signature. Julia's jaw tightened. Then we start where they're most vulnerable. Chain of title and capacity. If this signature's invalid, everything downstream is infected. We file a temporary injunction to freeze any transfer. But I need more than gut and a pretty circle around a shaky I'll get you more, I said. Paper's only half of it. The house is breathing like a warehouse. She glanced at the utility curve. Refrigeration. Night spikes. No permit. Julia tapped her pen. Then we have 2 lanes. Civil title action and a potential criminal referral if commerce is happening in a residence. Any known connection between Raven Holdings and your family? Daniel, I said. Logistics. He's the kind of man shell companies hire to make trucks look legitimate. Good, Julia said. Then we follow the trucks. She drafted an engagement letter. I signed. She photographed each document, scanned to a case file, and handed me a neat checklist with boxes that looked insultingly small for the work ahead. Next, she said, I want the original will, not a copy. If your grandfather left the house to you, that's our anchor. I'll subpoena the notary ledger and county video from the day the deed was filed. And Andrea, she paused, eyes steady. Do not contact Jessica again. Let them call you. People reveal more when they think silence is power. Silence has never been her problem, I said, standing. As I left the firm, my burner phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. I pocketed the message without a reply. When people want you off a trail, they either throw noise or lay traps. The text was noise. The traps were still ahead. I drove a slow loop past the house. A black van idled 2 doors down, no signage, driver on his phone with the slump of someone told to wait until dark. I didn't stare. I've tailed enough targets to know the first rule. Let the scene forget you were there. Back at my apartment, I opened the green legal pad and drew new columns under money. Escrow company, wire origin, receiving bank. Then I opened a private channel and pinged 2 people I trust more than most blood relatives. Matthew and Jenna. Matthew replied first. You finally asking for help? I'm honored. I sent him the parcel number, deed image, and the LLC registry data. I need corporate linkages and any procurement overlap. Off-book is fine. Chain of custody cleaner. His dots blinked for a long moment. On it. I'll scrape Secretary of State filings and cross with vendor blacklists. Give me a day. I didn't have a day, but I had Matthew. Jenna came online next, camera off always. Show me the paper. I uploaded the scans and utility graph. Find me the IPs behind Raven's filings, and any DNS leaks on their payment portals. Also, I want a fingerprint on the PDF that bears my forged signature. You're assuming amateurs, she typed. I'm assuming arrogance, I replied. Family breeds it. She sent a thumbs up emoji, then a line I've heard her deliver before a dozen takedowns. Let's peel them. While they worked their lanes, I drove to a storage unit 2 towns over and retrieved a fireproof envelope I hadn't opened in years. Inside were archival DVDs, a USB drive, and a manila folder labeled in my grandfather's careful hand. I slid the folder out and felt the steadiness of a man who had never rushed a line. The original will was there. Ink, emboss, witnesses. My name on the bequest. No transfer clause. No contingencies. I placed it flat on the table and took 3 high-res photos, front and back, then sealed it again. Some things you keep analog because digital is too easy to lose. At dusk, Peter knocked once and stepped into the hall with the wary kindness of someone who knows when to talk and when to listen. Ex-Marine, grease under his nails, eyes that have scanned more perimeters than he mentions. You were right, he said, voice low. The vans come late. They kill their plates before they turn onto the block. I logged a partial on one before it flipped. 3 letters, starts with VQ, Virginia commercial issue. And they unload at the side door. Always gloved. No chatter. Any schedule? I asked. Twice a week. Tuesdays and Fridays. Tonight's Tuesday. I checked my watch. 40 minutes to full dark. You going in? He asked. Not inside, I said. I'll set ears. I just need voices. Peter studied me. You look like you've done this before. I look like I learned from people who did it to others. He nodded once, handed me a cheap keychain camera. Motion activated. Don't get fancy. Fancy gets caught. When he left, I packed a small pouch. Micro recorder, 2 adhesive mics, a pencil flashlight I could bite if I needed both hands. I pulled on dark jeans, a work jacket, a cap. Nothing tactical. Tactical screams intent. Tonight I needed to look like the sort of person no one notices. The woman taking out trash, the neighbor cutting across the alley to save a step. By the time I reached the back lot, the sky had settled into that thin blue hour that hides more than it reveals. I crouched by a broken fence panel and watched. Engines rumbled low. 2 black vehicles slid in without headlights. Doors opened with soft thunks. Footsteps. The smell of cold air spilling from somewhere it shouldn't. A set of keys jangled. A side door clicked. Voices. Muffled, then closer. Offload 6 crates here. No labels this time. Daniel wants it quiet. Then another voice, one I knew too well even through Cinderblock and years. David, calm, deliberate, like he was reading a grocery list. If Andrea finds a crack, seal it. No warnings. I placed one mic under the vent lip, another on the downspout bracket, sticky side pressed to rust. The motion cam faced the loading edge, tucked behind a torn poster that advertised a band that broke up 10 summers ago. When gloved hands passed within its cone, a tiny diode blinked once, like a heartbeat. I eased back into shadow and let the scene play without me. Boxes moved. The cold hum deepened. A door shut. Tires rolled. Silence returned, the thick kind that makes your pulse sound loud. Back in the car, I pressed play. The mics had caught enough. Crate counts, schedule, a first name order from Daniel, and my father's voice instructing strangers to erase me with the efficiency of men who have never picked up what they broke. I texted Julia. I have audio that ties activity to Daniel and captures David giving directive language. Not the content, the control. She replied. Perfect. That's pattern and presence. We use it to support the injunction and tease criminal exposure without burning your source. I stared at the waveform on my screen, a jagged line of treachery, and let the anger cool into something more useful. In the CIA we say the same thing 100 ways, but it boils down to this. Don't swing until you own the room. Tonight, I didn't swing. I mocked the room. The night pressed in close, heavy with silence broken only by the hum of the streetlight above me. I sat in my car 2 blocks away, replaying the audio from the alley on a loop, each repetition carving the truth deeper. David's voice, my father's, giving orders to erase me. It should have been impossible to mistake. I'd grown up with that tone. Measured, calm, certain. The voice of authority I once mistook for love. The weight of it pressed harder than the years I spent overseas. There, enemies didn't share your blood. At 10:45, headlights swept across the lot, and I tensed. Another unmarked van, plates dark. It stopped near the same side door, and men stepped out, their movements sharp, wordless. One carried a clipboard, another a flashlight angled low. A rhythm of routine, the kind you only see when people have done this dozens of times without interruption. I stayed low, camera clipped to my collar, mic already live. Their crates disappeared into the building, shadows moving like clockwork. The door shut again, sealing whatever they hid inside. I shifted my focus to the house itself. The lights in the living room were on, curtains only half drawn. Through the narrow slit, I saw Jessica pacing, phone pressed tight to her ear. She stopped at the window, her silhouette outlined against the glow. For one fragile second, it looked like she was staring straight at me. I held my breath. Then she turned away, snapping the curtain closed. Minutes dragged. At the corner, movement. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Peter. He didn't look at me, didn't wave. He just bent as if tying his boot near the lamppost, then walked off, leaving a folded slip of paper wedged under my windshield wiper. When I slid it free, the words hit harder than the cold night air. If you're the real Andrea, meet me at Alley 7. 11 p.m. Come alone. I checked my watch. 10 minutes. Enough to think. Enough to decide. My instinct screamed trap, but instinct also told me the people moving crates weren't just family thieves, they were something darker. And traps reveal more than open doors if you step in right. At 11 sharp, I was in the alley behind the old bakery, shadows thick, walls damp with years of neglect. A man emerged from the far end. Weathered face, mid-40s, movements careful. Peter. They said you were unstable, he muttered, keeping his eyes on the ground. That combat changed you. But I've seen what's happening here. It's not you who's dangerous. It's them. I kept my voice level. What do you know? He glanced at the fence, at the warehouse crouched behind the house. Black vans. Crates in the night. Plates vanish before they park. And your sister's husband, Daniel. He's here every week. Gloves on, never a word. You don't use that kind of routine for family heirlooms. That's organized. The words hit like the crack of a gavel. Confirmation of what I already knew. They weren't just erasing me. They were building something rotten on the bones of what should have been mine. I closed my jacket tighter around the recorder in my pocket, its red light pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Then it's time we show the truth. Peter nodded once, the kind of nod soldiers share when no other words fit. And in that moment, the line was drawn. Family on one side. Proof on the other. I knew which side I was on. By dawn, I was back in my apartment, blinds drawn, laptop screens glowing. The city outside was waking up. I was already 10 steps deep. I uploaded the audio files, the forged deed, the utility curve, every scrap of paper into an encrypted channel. Matthew and Jenna were waiting. Matthew's face appeared first on video, cap pulled low, the same calm expression he'd worn in darker times. I ran Raven Holdings through corporate registries. It's a shell. Registered in Nevada, managed by another shell, but the same name keeps surfacing, Daniel. He shows up as consultant. That's cover language for handler. I leaned forward. What about procurement overlap? Matthew clicked, a PDF sliding across the screen. Drone parts. Radio gear. Back in 2016, a company tied to Daniel, Maritech Solutions, bid on federal contracts. They were caught forging compliance reports. Case sealed before it hit court. The words landed heavy. So this isn't just real estate fraud. It's federal-level misappropriation. Before Matthew could answer, Jenna's voice crackled through audio only. She never showed her face. Isolated metadata on the deed scan. Whoever made it copied Andrea's signature from a 2017 tax return. Sloppy cut and paste, but hidden under notary compression. And the IP log for the upload? It leaks through a dirty VPN. Guess where it traces back? I already knew. Jessica's home? Bingo. Fairfax Residential. Same subnet as her foundation office. Amateurs always think VPNs are magic cloaks. Jenna chuckled. Also, Andrea, your CIA personnel file was probed last night. Someone tried to access your agency psych assessment. They're digging for ways to discredit you. I swallowed the sting. Let them. I've survived worse than whispers. The screen blinked again. An email forwarded anonymously into our secure channel. Subject line. She's connecting the dots. Lockdown accounts. The Hale girl is persistent. I stared at the words. They were already trying to erase the trail again. Julia arrived at my apartment that evening with 2 folders. She spread them across the table like cards in a rigged game. Bank wires from Raven Holdings to Jessica's private account. Over $500,000 in 18 months. 3 transfers from a shell tied to Daniel. Timed exactly with the deed filing. And this, she tapped a notary record, signed by a woman whose license expired in 2020. It was enough. More than enough. I met Julia's eyes. Then we move now. File for injunction, tie in the fraud, and escalate to federal jurisdiction. She nodded. Anthony will take this. He's been waiting for a case like it. For the first time since stepping off that taxi, I felt something steady beneath me. Not anger, not despair. Focus. They thought erasing me was easy. But I had what they didn't. Chain of custody, digital proof, and people who knew how to make it count. And tomorrow, I'd put it all in front of someone who could turn it into law. The courthouse in Fairfax smelled of old stone and varnish, a place where history stacked itself in files taller than men. Julia walked beside me, her leather case heavy with proof, deed scans, utility graphs, bank wires. We weren't here to argue yet. We were here to stop the bleeding. At the property office, the clerk frowned at the screen. This deed is active. Julia's voice was steady. That's precisely why we're filing an injunction. Forgery, fraud, and title tampering. Here's the evidence. She slid the folder across. The woman's eyes widened at the weight of signatures, mismatched strokes, notary stamps gone stale. She stamped our petition, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Effective immediately, she said. All transactions on this parcel are frozen pending investigation. For the first time, the house wasn't slipping further away. We didn't celebrate. We drove straight there. Pulled into the driveway. Walked up to the door. Jessica answered in her polished blazer, smile faltering when she saw me standing tall beside Julia. We're here to serve you, Julia said, handing over the envelope. Effective immediately, all transfers or modifications of this property are suspended. You've been notified. Jessica's hands trembled as she opened it. Daniel appeared behind her, slow, deliberate, eyes narrowing like he wanted the paper to burn before he even touched it. You really want to go this route, Andrea? He asked. His voice was oil and gravel. You don't know who you're fighting. I met his stare. Come. Controlled. I worked counterintelligence for the CIA, Daniel. I've seen men like you bluff, threaten, then fold. For a heartbeat, fear flickered in his eyes. Jessica sputtered. You can't do this. You're not the rightful owner. Julia cut in. That's what we'll prove in court. Fraud is a felony. The door slammed shut behind them. Louder than it needed to be. A curtain dropped. Silence. Back in the car, Julia looked at me. They'll hit back, Andrea. Hard. Are you ready? I stared at the dark windows of the house that used to be mine. They erased me on paper. Now I'll erase their lies the same way. The courtroom was colder than I expected. All pale walls and steel benches that hummed when anyone shifted. I sat behind the witness table, right hand raised, the oath catching like sandpaper in my throat. Anthony, the federal prosecutor, nodded for me to begin. My name is Andrea, I said. I'm 40 years old, a former CIA officer. And this, I tapped the folder on the table, is the proof of how my family erased me. The defense tried to control the pace, objecting, posturing, spinning a story of misunderstanding. But they couldn't argue with the evidence. On the overhead screen, Anthony displayed the forged deed, my signature copied from a 2017 tax return, witnessed by Jessica. Gasps rustled through the benches when the notary's expired license flashed in red. Then came the bank transfers. $500,000 flowing into Jessica's personal account, 3 time deposits from a shell tied to Daniel, each coinciding with property filings. The courtroom grew stiller with every page. The audio file was next. My father's voice, David, calm, deliberate, saying, if Andrea finds a crack, seal it. No warnings. The words echoed off the walls like a sentence already passed. Jessica sat frozen, mascara running. Daniel clenched his jaw, whispering harshly to his lawyer. David didn't flinch at all, stone-faced, staring through me like I was still 12 years old asking him to look at my report card. I leaned into the microphone. They didn't just steal a house. They used my credentials to apply for federal contracts. They laundered money through shell companies. They erased me because they thought no one would question them. But I'm here. And I'm not going away. Silence held. Then, from the back row, a veteran in a worn navy jacket nodded slowly, his hand tightening around the cane beside him. Others followed, subtle gestures of recognition. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. The judge looked down at the stack of exhibits. Given the weight of this evidence, motions to dismiss are denied. The case will proceed to full trial 6 weeks from today. All restraining orders and property freezes remain in effect. It wasn't victory yet. But it was real. The walls they built on lies were finally cracking in the one place they couldn't control. Under oath. The trial moved faster than anyone expected. Anthony had built a case that left no room for shadows. Deeds, signatures, bank wires, recordings, procurement fraud, all chained together with timestamps and testimony. Day after day, I sat in the front row, steady, watching the truth I carried turn into weight they couldn't outrun. The verdict came in the kind of silence that feels eternal. The judge's voice was even, unshaken. Jessica, 6 years in federal custody. Daniel, 8 years. David, 10 years, no parole. A collective intake of breath swept through the courtroom. No one cheered. No one clapped. Justice rarely arrives with noise. It arrives with finality. I didn't look at Jessica when she broke down, or at Daniel when his lawyer whispered furiously in his ear. I glanced once at my father. He looked smaller, not from age, but from the erosion of arrogance. Helen sat a few rows back, silent, red-eyed, her hands twisting in her lap. She had never spoken against them, never spoken for me. Her silence was its own verdict. When I stepped outside, reporters surged, cameras flashing, questions flying. I ignored them. The first faces I truly saw were the veterans. Men and women in faded jackets, ribbons pinned to fabric worn thin by years. One, a man with a prosthetic leg, extended his hand. "Colonel," he said softly, "you made sure we're not forgotten." I gripped his hand. "Not while we're still standing." Weeks later, I stood in the Defense Service Library. The wall of dedication gleamed with etched names, dark granite polished to a mirror sheen. And there, carved in stone, unerasable, Andrea. CIA officer. Valor. Service. Integrity. I had lost a house, a family, illusions I once mistook for love. But I gained something they could never take. My place in history, my right to belong to my own story. Some battles end in fire. Mine ended in silence, granite, and truth. I didn't forgive them. I didn't go back. Justice had spoken. And I walked forward, lighter than I had in 25 years. I walked out of that courthouse with no home, no family, but with something far stronger. Proof that the truth can't be erased. They thought forged papers and whispered lies would bury me, but in the end, it was their empire that collapsed, brick by brick, under the weight of evidence. I didn't forgive them, and I didn't look back. Justice spoke louder than blood, and I claimed my story on my own terms. But tell me, if it were you, would you fight for justice against your own family, no matter the cost?